Welcome to the Youth and Beyond podcast, building bridges on the fight against human trafficking with the Survivor Council and the Detroit Human Trafficking Task Force. Today we have with us Lady T, Thompson, extraordinaire, Samantha, and Tamesa. We're going to be talking to you today about our asks for our legislative proposals and the ordinance that we have on the floor. Would you like to talk a little bit about that, Lady T?
Oh, my goodness. I would love to, but I would be remiss if I started because guess what? We have the director of the Detroit Human Task Force here with us. No one other than Tamesa Bailey. Yes, she's an attorney, and we love our she-rolls that's in the legal area. But she is also the chief of staff for Councilwoman Calloway's office. So I think it would be befitting if you kick us off.
Thank you, Lady T. Thank you, Alice. I'm Tamesa Bailey, director of the Detroit Human Trafficking Task Force, which, as Lady T mentioned, was created out of the office of Detroit City Councilmember Angela Whitfield Calloway. And so the task force really over the past year has been working a lot on advocacy efforts, trying to get meaningful pieces of legislation that we feel will address human trafficking, not only in the city of Detroit, but also in the state of Michigan as a whole. So we have two types of advocacy that we've been doing. We've been advocating on the state level as well as the city level. So just a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we headed to Lansing and we did an advocacy day against human trafficking where we had 3 legislative asks that we put before legislators that we felt would address human trafficking. The first was an ask for record restriction and a certificate of actual innocence for individuals who have been trafficked as minors and who have been forced to do crimes while they were being trafficked. And so we feel that this is a great way to give survivors of human trafficking a fresh start. It will give them the ability to get jobs and things of that nature and not have those crimes hanging over their head because we know that they were being exploited and we know that they were being forced to do so. The second legislative acts that we had was about hotel outreach. We understand that a lot of these human trafficking activities take place in the hospitality realms at hotels and motels and things of that nature. And so we have a legislative ask to have a sign, a placard placed in hotels and motels that would have the human trafficking hotline number as well as a number to local law enforcement present. So if there is a young lady who's being trafficked at a hotel, she can look at that placard and get that number and hopefully call and get some help. We just had someone found in a hotel in Inkster, and if that placard had been there, if that information had been readily available for her, she might have been able to get out in a more timely manner. The third ask is to ask for training grants to be able to create educator and survivor-led trainings about human trafficking that can be disseminated to court system, law enforcement, anybody really who would ever come into contact with trafficking survivors. And so we went to Lansing. We had a one-pager. We were talking, advocating very strongly for those 3 things because we do feel that they would go a long way to solving the problem of human trafficking here. At the city level, our hotel outreach ordinance is already moving through the process. It was introduced and set for a public hearing yesterday at the Detroit City Council, and it's the same thing. So if hotels and motels in the city of Detroit will be required to put a placard in the lobby or in high traffic areas so that individuals, if they might be, experiencing trafficking while they're in those hotels, they can see that and be able to call. And it will require hotels to put that there. And so that we really hope that that will be a deterrent, that it will be a way for people to get help. And so we're very excited about it. So we're doing things at the state level, at the city level, and we really feel like, if this stuff gets traction, that we will go a long way to addressing this issue. So I'm really happy to be here today and have a platform to even talk about it.
Well, thank you. I'm seeing it's full of information, and this is so important. The ask is so important. One of the things that we've been trying to do with the task force since the beginning is just get the public involved, protect our youth, and part of it is having this ask is, in a sense, protecting our youth because if we have the hotel ordinance, right? So when they come into the lobby, they're going to see that they can that there is help available, right? Because even if I don't really know what it is, if I ask somebody, I can find out what it is. And then, you got big businesses that, might have some pushback and be like, no, we don't want that in our hotels because our hotels are so fancy and so pretty. But at the end of the day, it's not about your hotel. It's about saving lives and giving people a way out. And the certificate of innocence is just as important, because when you got youth trying to get jobs, and they're trying to take their life back, and they're trying to be empowered in the community, they can't even go to college, you know what I mean, without people looking at their record and saying, oh, this is not somebody I want to deal with, you know what I mean. So we, as a a moral society, and people who say that we're standing in this should have been on the floor from the beginning, but here it is 9 years later, and we're saying, you guys need to catch up. You need to catch up on what we need to be able to move forward.
I think there's, if I can add to this,
Come on,
this
Lady
wonderful
T.
discourse, I think there's some unique positionings, and why I'm so proud, not just because I'm from Detroit, but why I'm so proud of the councilwoman, or I'm so proud of you as the director of the Detroit Human Task Force, Tamesa, is this is an essential element to all citizens. Every single zip code in the state of Michigan is impacted by trafficking. I'll say that again. Every single zip code. No one is exempt from experiencing any form of trafficking. And there's so many different forms. But there's another unique piece to this. And a unique piece is, according to the McCain Institute, the NFL draft is the largest sex exploitive and trafficking event that this country sees. So just think about that. The largest national sporting event has high upticks of sex exploitation and trafficking in all its forms. So Detroit, we're so proud that the NFL draft is coming on April the 24th, but there comes a problem that's attached to it. And that's the uptick of trafficking. So I'm proud of the city of Detroit and everything that you've done, Tamesa, in terms of really driving this with the councilwoman to the city council to do preventative and education and awareness to businesses in terms of offsetting and protecting those who may not even know that they're being trafficked. I'm very, very proud of that. I'd love to hear from our youth leader from the Survivor Council. Samantha, what are some of the questions or things that you're interested in understanding about our legislative ask?
Okay, so I have quite a few questions for everyone to answer. I'll kick it off with, how will the proposed record restriction provide relief and a fresh start for victims of human trafficking, especially those charged as minors?
I think Alice can speak to that. I think in Lansing, you did a great job of really talking about how this impacts you. You can't get a job. You can't go to college. It's so many things. So I think you could definitely speak to that.
Well, it's kind of a no-brainer. If I have this record, I can go into these places and I could be the best person for that job. But if that is on my record, sometimes it's thrown in the garbage. People don't see me as a value. They see me as someone that they have to watch, that they have to, that will, take advantage, because with this on my record, I'm a criminal. And so anytime that you're viewed as a criminal, it doesn't even matter. Even when you're going into schools and you're trying to apply for colleges, or you want to work with the people, all these things, it stagnate me from moving forward, which causes things like me continuing to do crime, me continuing to be in poverty, having mental health issues that come along with that, because now I'm unemployable, and I'm having to do crimes to continue to survive, even though I don't want to. So that makes me self-loathe, that makes me self-hate. And so it's just a downward spiral. And if we're in this to help the youth, right? And if we're in this to prevent this, we really need something that's going to stand and say, you know what? Even if you do get caught up as a youth, we're not going to hold this on you for the rest of your life. Because what that does is really opens the door for youth to even be able to say, hey, this is happening, and adults. Because if someone has this on their record, and they were proven to be trafficked as a child, right? So that still should apply to them as well, because at the end of the day, it's our kind of charge to like to make a way for our youth and survivors who have been caught up in this process. And so I think I'm gonna leave it with that.
That's
Absolutely,
excellent.
yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you for talking about some of the social determinants. Poverty is one of the biggest social determinants into how people are in the cycle, the continuing cycle of any disparities associated with trafficking. Rather, it's their inability to find a job, to have other career choices, because that record hinders them.
Yeah.
They can't move forward, particularly if they had their occurrences when they were a minor. So I love the fact that you brought in that it's a charge. It's a charge
Right.
that it's our responsibility to help. And the certificate of innocence.
Yeah, that's what I
now
was
we
gonna say.
have the
That's
lawyer
very
with
important.
us, so I can't wait to see what your contributions is about the certificate of innocence.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that's why the certificate of actual innocence is so important. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice, but the certificate of actual innocence is very important because it wipes the slate clean. It's more than just record restriction. If you do record restriction, in some ways your record might be able to still be found. But with a certificate of actual innocence, it's going to wipe the slate clean. It's going to say that you were actually innocent of these charges that you were charged with because you did it as a minor. You did it under coercion. It was not something that you really wanted to do. So that's why the certificate of actual innocence piece is so important, because it is going to provide that clean slate. It's going to wipe all of that away.
And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you're just letting them get away with crime, especially if this is something that has carried over into their adulthood, and why should they get a certificate of innocence? So, like a lot of survivors, first of all, don't know that they're being trafficked, and they might not find out till years later. And then once they attempt to get their lives back together, if they have gotten a program, they've finished probation and all these different things, and they're trying to succeed in society, why would we hold them hostage?
I think it's important for us to constantly push the narrative that individuals who have been victimized by human trafficking should not be criminalized for that victimization. That's why record restriction is so important for these people who have been caught up in the cycle of human trafficking. It says to them, and it reminds society at large, that they are the victims here, that they were not seeking, criminal engagement, but that they were caught up in it. And so their record of criminality, which was imposed on them, should not be allowed to follow them throughout the course of their life and prevent them from living a life as normal as possible.
All right, so another question I have for everyone is kind of what the importance of the certificate of actual innocence is, and kind of how it symbolizes justice for all of the victims involved.
Oh, yes. Yes, as I mentioned, so the certificate of actual innocence is extremely important because it's more than record restriction. A certificate of actual innocence lets you know that you are actually innocent of those charges. Maybe you done it as a minor, you were exploited, and so a certificate of actual innocence actually wipes the slate clean. And so it is, in a sense, providing justice for those victims because it allows society to understand that this person was a victim. They were actually coerced into doing this or forced into doing this. They didn't even realize that they were being trafficked, and now they've sort of got into this world, and now they're, like Alice was saying, it's like a downward spiral, and we shouldn't hold them hostage by doing that. So that's why the certificate of actual innocence piece is so important, because we want to be able to wipe the slate clean. We want people to be able to have a fresh start, and we don't want things that someone was forced to do and something that they did as a minor and something that they were made to do by another person who was actually committing a crime against them be held against them for the future, because as we know, they won't be able to thrive under those circumstances. And so that's why I believe certificate of actual innocence is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I couldn't imagine being held down like that.
Well, imagine how that would feel for the person that's actually been their basic rights have been denied, their human rights have been taken away, and then to come into this society of normalcy that we would say, right, and trying to get ahead. Imagine what that would do for them spiritually to be able to get that certificate of innocence that says after they have been persecuted and put in juvenile and put in foster care and all these different, labeled a runaway, labeled a derelict, labeled all these different things, and then to actually be able to get that certificate of innocence that says this is not who I am.
I
It's
you know,
freedom.
the ability to really make sure that we're protecting those vulnerable populations who were not able to protect themselves. A minor is a minor. Let's call it out for what it is. And oftentimes in these situations, these horrific situations, they have rights too. I love that you said human rights, right? What can we do in the roles that we play as actors of change, but protect people? And if someone has had these occurrences when they are minor, they need protection too. They need to have the slate clean. And I'm so proud. I segue back to the Detroit Human Task Force in terms of all three of their asks. And Councilwoman Calloway, in terms of really being a driving engine to allow this task force to accelerate. Now, I know that our council, that Samantha, Samantha is with the Survivor Youth Council. She has another question for the second ask that we have.
I do. Okay, so this one's kind of going towards the hotel outreach. So, how crucial is the visibility of human trafficking help information in hotels for the identification and rescue of victims?
It's vital. I would say that it's vitally important. We see these kinds of things in airports. We are there. There's already a precedent set for this type of activity. So we know that it saves lives. If somebody's being trafficked through an airport and they happen to be able to get free enough to go to the bathroom, they see that number, they can call, and they know, like Alice was saying, that help is near. They understand that what's happening to me is not right, and there's a number that I can call to get help. And so if we can do it in the airport, and we know that a lot of this activity takes place in hotels and motels, then it should be in the hotels and motels too. We need to put the information where the individuals can see it and be able to get help and escape. I mentioned earlier the story about the young lady who was found in Inkster. She was being held in a motel in Inkster with no help. Eventually, she was able to get away and find a phone, but I think that was after like 7 years or something like that. And so if the information was visibly posted in the lobby, in the rooms, on the back of doors, any high traffic areas, then like Alice was saying, you would know that there's somebody that you can call to get help. You don't have to just sit in this situation and wait for your moment to escape. The information is readily available there for you. So as long as you can find a phone, you can call to get help on that hotline. And so I just feel like it's imperative. I feel like it will rescue people. It will save lives. And I feel like at the very least, it can be a deterrent, right? If you are coming into a hotel with nefarious intentions and you know you're about to do something wrong and you see that this establishment, we do have this hotline number up here, we will call the police if we suspect something is going wrong, then at the very least you're going to think twice. And so I really feel like it's vital.
Yeah. May I add to that? If I can piggyback off of that, Alice said it so eloquently. Oftentimes, people in these situations, they don't even know that they're trafficked.
Exactly.
That young lady in Inkster, she may not have known it. You have migratory communities. Michigan is very unique. And before I go into my diatribe, let me say this. I am so proud of the state of Michigan. Did you know not every airport has the listings of the hotline in it? And I travel domestically and internationally. Not every airport in the United States of America has the human trafficking hotline, national hotline listed. I'm proud of Detroit, the Detroit DTW, Detroit Wayne County Airport. I had to get that out. That they have that listed everywhere. I'm also proud that because Detroit is a free trade zone, they even have truckers, the 18-wheeler the 18-wheeler
Truckers against trafficking.
It's truckers against trafficking here in Michigan. They are really, and Michigan is really solid in their advocacy against it. But going back to the crimes in the hotels. When you have these migratory communities, you have people sometimes that they don't speak the language. You have special populations. You have people that may have hearing impairment, or they may be populations of mental impairments. And not in knowing the ability that there's a trusted individual, a trusted entity that they can communicate with, and even with the picture of the number, seeing the number, that's hope. That's a beacon of hope for people who may not even understand or need it in emergency situations. So I'm so thrilled that the city of Detroit is taking the ordinance very serious, and even the state of Michigan. I'm so proud that Alice is on the Michigan Commission of Human Trafficking Board. Did I say that correctly, Alice? That even yesterday they were impressed by our advocacy day on March the 19th, that they wanted the one page information about the statistics and data. But I love to hear your position on what your thoughts are, Alice, about the hotel motel outreach, being the wonderful seasoned expert extraordinaire. That's the expert. Do you know Alice
really
is
be
the
hearing from
warrior?
Alice.
Yeah. Alice is the warrior that got the Warrior Award for the state of Michigan. What was the name of the organization that gave you that award?
Sacred Beginnings.
Yes, Sacred
But what
Beginnings.
was that name of that organization that just gave you an award, Lady T?
I don't know.
Oh,
what you're
you
talking
remember?
about.
It's on a national level?
I don't know.
Oh,
what you're talking
okay.
about, right?
These ladies do
Oh,
this.
look at her getting all humble
Extraordinaire,
now.
right? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This is what they do.
The reason why I'm bringing it up is there is no place in this state where Alice has not reached someone. And I do believe in giving people their flowers. And I've not met another human being so deserving of the flowers and the advocacy that she's done. And I say that because Alice and I, we sat with a 10-person fellowship for 6 months as a cohort,
class
cohort 8 for the National Human Trafficking
Hi, guys.
Technical Assistance Center. And even with this, I can't wait for them to hear this podcast so they can really hear how dynamic Alice is and will continue to be. But we focused in on online harms and youth being from 8 to 24. So this ordinance about the hotel motel reach, I cannot even fathom the prevention or the assistance that it can help with the National Human Trafficking Hotline, what that can do. So I just would love to hear, Alice, what contributions you have.
Everybody knows it's a no-brainer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of us who are, just do our day-to-day lives, go to work, come back home, take care of our families, and we're kind of like in a bubble, right? But the people that are on the ground, like the police, the courts, we all know that hotels are like a major place where people get trafficked: hotels, casinos, strip clubs, so it's kind of a no-brainer to actually put that out there so that people can have that ability to be able to recognize what it is. If we could get, and what's the harm in just having a poster with the human trafficking hotline on it? My thing would be, if you don't want it, then why?
It's a great excellent question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Michigan, regrettably, according to the Share Hope, when it comes to child trafficking, we don't get a good grade. And I know that Governor Whitmer is investing with the Michigan Human Trafficking Commission, for a statutory body, to make sure that we adhere to the requirements for the state of Michigan. So again, I don't know of any a city human trafficking task force that liaises with a state so readily and welcome. So kudos to the Detroit Human Task Force, and kudos to each and every one of you, and including our youth from the
Samantha.
Don't forget about the youth.
Because it's in we're doing these things to help for prevention and education and awareness. Because guess what? I know Lady T at some point is gonna hand you the baton. Like, here you go, Samantha.
Oh God.
You go take on this baton of advocacy. But do you have any other questions for us, Samantha?
I do. Kind of what the overall impact is that you think that this will have on deterring trafficking and also protecting victims overall. I mean, across the state when it comes to hotels and motels.
Well, what I think is that the overall will be that the standard of our society here in Michigan. Like, we're setting the standard. Like, at the very least, you need to have this propaganda, and how it will affect the ground level as a whole. With the certificate of innocence and the hotel outreach together is really telling those who've been trafficked that there is a safe place, and that I can be honest, and I can ask for help, and I can, you know, get my life back. Because without it, we're just saying, we're just like way in the background saying, hey, here we are, but nobody sees us, nobody hears us. And the more we become prevalent, and the more we are visual with our advocacy and with our resources, and with our ability to be able to help those, the more of those that will come forward and not have to be trafficked for the rest of their lives.
I couldn't agree more. I think it creates a culture in the city. It creates a culture of anti-human trafficking. There's no room in our state. There's no room in our city for this activity. I started my human trafficking work in the city of Atlanta, and we have, and the city of Atlanta is one of the places that was known for like being a huge human trafficking hub. You got the international airport, all of the highways, all of the sporting events that come there. And there were advocates there who said, we need to make it plain to all of the people who are coming into the city of Atlanta, we will not have this. So the mayor of Atlanta, the state legislature, all of those people are on notice that, you know, this is an important issue. And it just created a whole culture of anti-human trafficking. They have the placards everywhere in the airports. It's all there. And I feel like that's what the same kind of thing that we're going to be trying to do here in the city of Detroit. We want
that's
the culture.
That's what we are doing.
That's right.
We are calling you to action.
Exactly.
This is what we need you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
we need you to join this charge, and we need you to step up to the plate as the mayor, as the legislators, as the council people.
Oh, I love that this is really a call to action, and understanding that it is indeed a call to action. The thing that gets me excited the most is it's replicatable. Mm-hmm. This is a replicatable action, call to action that any city, any state, any county can do the same thing, regardless to if you have a national sports team or sports activity coming. You too can be a part of the anti-trafficking movement. So great question, Samantha.
Right. It's been done once, and we can do it again.
Mm-hmm. We are doing it. Like Alice said, we're doing it right now.
We're doing
this
it.
Is the whole
right
point.
now.
The public hearing is May 13th?
Tentatively.
Tentatively.
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
All right, I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to go over to the training side of our asks. So I'd like to know kind of why it's essential to implement age-appropriate survivor and educator-led human trafficking training, both in schools and in law enforcement.
Ooh, I like to take this question.
Come on, lady.
So, Alice and I, when we were part of the NITEC Fellowship in Cohort 8, we had the privilege of going to a private focus group. Can I say private? Mm-hmm. I won't say all of the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s from the different law enforcement agencies that were there, but there were a lot of different law enforcement agencies. And there are some commonalities to what training, prevention, and education does. It's not a one-sided thing. There's a continuum of care. In human trafficking, the continuum of care needs to reach everyone. Mm-hmm. Families, schools, community organizations, law enforcement, judiciary, members. Everyone needs to be a part of this anti-trafficking movement. It has no respect of person. So when I look at, there is only $1 million that has been allocated for training in the state of Michigan. That's an F. We've been given an F too by Share Hope for that. We have an F on a report card. We could do a better job. I am delighted to know and understand that Melissa Pale-Poe, who's over the Michigan Human Trafficking Commission, has that mandate to really explore and increase the trafficking training and to include survivors. There has to be more funds allocated for this process. It needs to be age appropriate. Most children, they're not able to understand what this hard, difficult conversation is, and explain to them that you could be in a situation with someone that you know. Familiar trafficking is real. It happens every day, every minute. So having funds allocated so that we can educate our youth that's in school, we can educate our law enforcement, and there's another piece to it. When we were in, and I'm so, I'm a fan of Alice's fan club. I was
I'm a
so
fan
impressed.
of you too, Lindsay.
I was so impressed with Alice when we were talking to all of those different law enforcement agencies. Alice broke it down. She broke it down in terms of how they too can have bad actors. We're not saying, because law enforcement is our friend. We're not saying that all law enforcement is have bad actors, but sometimes in all things you have bad actors. So sometimes they can perpetrate and continue to exploit or re-exploit the people that they need to be saving. So in that, the training of what being trauma informed has a value, the training on what the trends are, the training of listening to what survivor leaders has to contribute to prevention and education and awareness is critical. But guess what? We have to do a better job with investing more money in the state of Michigan. We have to do a better job in all cities, all counties around the country in protecting our youth, because that's the next generation. It's not about us. And with all of the variations of technology, because you can use the PS, what is it called? The PS 5, 6, 7. Those little games. You can use this a game called Fortnite. I've witnessed this with my own grandchildren. My grandson was on the game talking to someone, and it sounded like they had a voice augmentation. And they're like, "Hello, my name is Johnny. What's your name?" And so my grandson said his name, and so they was like, he's like, the voice augmentation individual was like, "Oh, where do you live?" Oh, no. And so he was like, "I live in Troy." And so then the Johnny character was like, "Well, what school do you go to?" And I was like, "Look here, get off that game right now." Mm-hmm. But the course of the conversation, because when you have a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, they think that that's their friend. Mm-hmm, yeah. So and my grandson is gifted. I'm like, "Well, how do you know this person?" He said, "Oh, I play on the game with him regularly. We're teammates. So this is my friend." I'm like, "Have you seen this individual live?" And so my grandson was like, "No, I've never met him, but he's my friend because he's my teammate. We play Fortnite." I'm like, "That's not your friend." And so from that day to now, the rules for the house is you can't play any of the games without your parents knowing physically who your teammate is. So we have to be proactive. And I'm using it as a small example about online harms, but there are so many instances, and I can't wait to hear from Alice, who does training. Alice does training. She goes to the jails. She creates programs and curriculums. Alice knows firsthand what the impact is to the populations that she serves. Alice, it's the truth.
Right. But one of the things, a couple things. So, they're one and the same, but they're two different things. Actually, three different things, because we got, of course, you want to age appropriate, because you do have familial trafficking, you do have gang trafficking, you do have people, youth in foster care systems, and not only that, but breaking it down to what types of trafficking and what comes with that, and what does the recovery look like with that, and the best practices for each one of those, and because you got sexual servitude, you got you got sexual exploitation, you got all these different types of trafficking, right? And so these things need to be broken down in a way that people can understand, and needs and that's when it's coming to the best practices. But when you're talking about age appropriateness, you got people who might be who need to understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate online, what's appropriate, not appropriate at 5, what's appropriate, not appropriate at 10, and then breaking it down to where it's not like very harsh. And we need to have trainings on what does that look like, because it could be many different things. It could be through AI. It could be through a comic book. It could be through different little games that you play where you're like interactive things where it's not talking about the harshness of it, but it says just breaking it down to where they understand, like, this might not be appropriate in my household, and maybe I do need to talk about somebody. What does safety look like? What does talking to somebody look like? Because in our society, in our society, especially inner city, it's like, if you tell, you a snitch. Right? And so when we put that into the atmosphere, we need to understand what we're saying to our youth. You know what I mean? And so having that broken down in that way, and having the survivor component of it, because there needs to be training from the court systems to the case managers to the guards in the jail, the guards in the juvenile systems. Because through all of these things, if you're labeled this way, then you're treated differently. You're treated less than human. You're not treated as the other children. I remember when I was in juvie, and I had to spend Christmas in a locked room while everybody else was out, because they didn't want to let the harlot with the rest of the children. Right. And so just things of that nature, and understanding, like, no, everybody's not in it doesn't mean that therapists and doctors and counselors and guards and police are all these horrible people. But at the end of the day, like, we've only just come to the understanding that this is a crime, right? But survivors have known that this is a crime, all of their lives. Like, I didn't just, this has been going on for generations and generations and generations. And so being able to break that down in a way that the police understand that their empathy towards this particular population is so important, because that's what's driving the force that's going to allow them to be able to ask for help, to be able to stand up for themselves. Because if I know that this police or this agency or these court system or these judges who are over me actually care for me, now I'm ready to be able to take that challenge, right? And so, and because survivors have that insight that we can go a little bit deeper, and it's not to take away from any trainings, it's to add to. It's not to take away from any agencies. It's to add to. Having the survivor component is something that has been passed down for generations and generations on different levels of recovery. In every level of recovery, there's a survivor component. There's survivors at the door. There's survivors from the top. There's all the way to the bottom. And it is all advocated and best practices and all the things through NAAA, recovery from lupus, from AIDS, from all these different things. There's a survivor component. So why wouldn't there be one here?
Ooh, I love an authenticity in that. I just learned this on March 13th. Tamesa and I, we did a session. And on March 13th, I learned that you need authentic experts. And authentic experts are survivors. And we are survivors of so many things. But you touched on something that's critical in terms of training. How can you have training without the authentic experts, but more importantly, what helping people to understand what a trusted individual is? You talked about different segmentations of people that youth, when they're trafficked, they may engage with, and all the different segmentation that you of individuals that you talked about. But how do we know who's trusted?
Right.
How can you be trusted if you have no empathy? Or you're so desensitized to it? So that was a good point. Great point, Alice. Did you have any contributions?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's like Alice was saying, it's a no-brainer. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? We are actually trying to get to the root of this problem, the root. So if we can train young people to recognize this is an unsafe situation that I'm in, this person is doing something to me that is inappropriate. I'm online talking to a person that I don't really know. Maybe that's a little bit unsafe. Like, those things are essential for young people to know, and it's essential for them to learn it through someone who can actually tell them real-life experiences. That's why the survivor survivor component is so important. Like, don't do these things because this happened to me. And the young people, they recognize that. Over the summer, we had a big summer event for advocate for the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And we felt so strongly that this training component was so important that we actually had a law enforcement officer come and train about safety on the internet, about not, getting into these internet relationships with these individuals, and these men are telling you everything that you want to hear. And if you're a young girl, you're going to respond to that. But if someone has already spoken to you and been like, you know what, that's probably a little bit unsafe, that's an inappropriate interaction, that person is probably, not the greatest person, they may be trying to do something to you, young girls will pick up on that. They will understand, like, oh, you know what? So-and-so said, let me not engage with this person. Let me ask an adult. Let me get some help. And so I just feel like it's so important. If we can nip a lot of this in the bud, if we can get young people to understand early on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, we can prevent a lot of this from even happening in the first place. And so I just feel like it's super important for the training to be available to young people. And it'll be age appropriate, right? It's important for them to just understand appropriateness and inappropriateness. And it's important, as Alice was saying, that our law enforcement, that our judges, that our people who are in the criminal justice system see a person who's been trafficked as a victim, somebody who has come through something and is trying to come out on the other side. And you need to understand what it is that I have been through. So I just feel like it's completely important for all the reasons that Lady T and Alice just talked about. And I just feel like if we can get to the root of the problem, we can solve it. So
right, and we need that funding because we have
Yes,
so
get back to the
many
money.
courts, we have so many police, we have so many
Yes.
juveniles, right?
Yes.
We have so many children that we need lots of trainings. We need lots of trainings on different levels of medical, of best practices, of the courts, and the jail systems. And so and I'm not talking about just in Detroit. We need it in Flint. We need it in Lansing. We need it in Muskegon, right? So we need it all across the state. And we need lots of it. So
and it's going to take money.
it's going to take money.
We need money.
So then-
we need money for anti-trafficking prevention and awareness. You heard it from us first. We need some more money. Governor, thank you for listening. We need some more money.
So if you got something to contribute to this conversation, make sure you go to the opengateway.org website so that you can go on the speak pipe and you can contribute to this conversation. So any podcast that we have coming up that you always can be a part of it, you can give us your bid on any topic that we talk about. So thank you again. Thank you for being a part. So make sure you share.